was never aware of my dad having many, if any, treasured possessions, but I did know of one thing that he really loved, that he cared about. It was his hi-fi set. He loved to listen to music. It was actually through his listening to music that I came to learn to love particularly classical music. He gave me the appetite for it. And when he died, I went to pack away his things, and when it got to his hi-fi set, I began to unscrew the speaker wires at the back of the amplifier. And I just began to sob, those kind of tears that can only come from the very depths of your soul. And as I did that, as I was unscrewing the wires, I whispered over and over, "I'm sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry." I'm not exactly sure what I was sorry about, but it was this awareness that this hi-fi, that meant so much both to him and to me, was now no longer his. It was just dust in the wind. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. The Hebrew word for that word translated as vanity is the word hebel, which means vapor or breath. So he's writing and says everything is just breath. I like the Common English Bible translates it as everything is perfectly pointless. How's that for a statement? Everything is perfectly pointless. The teacher, as he calls himself, goes on to say, "I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see, all is vanity and a chasing after the wind." The cynics love this passage, I think, because you can say, why bother? I mean, everything's a waste of time if you look at the mess the world's in. The morbid, and when I say morbid, I don't mean the medically depressed people. I mean the Eeyores of our world. They love this passage too because they can walk around and go, so what's the point of life anyway? It's all just a waste of time. But I don't see this passage at all as being cynical or morbid. I think what it is true. And the way it's written forces us to look, forces us to consider in what way it is true. I think many people don't like this passage. They find it morbid or they find it cynical because it forces us to acknowledge what we don't want to be true. We don't want to think that what he says is true. Because we spend our lives performing these deeds under the sun. And now how dare some grumpy philosopher from nearly 3,000 years ago come along and tell us that our life's work, our treasured possessions, our great achievements are nothing but vapor. Of course, at least some of us are going to respond cynically and dismissively. These things, these accomplishments, these bragging rights, these are the things that make up our life, that define us. And if Ecclesiastes is true, then what's left? Can I say it again? If Ecclesiastes is true, then what's left? That's what we fear. That's what we react to. It's not that everything we have is meaningless, because what we have, some of these things are our treasures. They are things we can, in a sense, be rightly proud of. The family car, granny's blanket, great-grandfather's writing desk, my dad's hi-fi set. They're the symbols of our life, and they're the symbols of the love that we have shared. But they are, at the end of the day, just hebel, vapor. And the teacher goes on to say, it's not just those things, it's not just our possessions. He goes on and says, I hated all my toil, in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or foolish. In other words, my life's work is inevitably going to end up in the hands of others who are either going to build on it or they might even destroy it. If you think of our own country's story, it's a stark reminder that you can give your life to the cause of freedom and justice. You can sit in prison for 27 years to defend that freedom and justice, and then you need just a handful of corrupt people to come and undo so much of what's been built. It's hebel. It's vapor. It's dust in the wind. So we do ask ourselves the question, man, if Ecclesiastes is true, then what really is left? What substance is there in life? The last two verses of our reading today hint, I think, at some of the responses we can make to living in a world of hebel, in a world of vapor. These are those verses. He writes, "There is nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment?" It's unusual for the scriptures to say eat, drink, and enjoy. And I suppose you could read, if you read those words in the context of this whole chapter, you could read those words with some despair. You know, the whole famous saying of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. There is a sense in which you could read it in that way, but I want us to do better than that. I want us to do more gospel work than that with this passage. So out of these same words, I wonder if I could suggest three things, three responses to a world of Hebel, a world of vapor. The first is to say that death is not the worst thing that could happen to us. And let me be cautious here to say I'm very conscious of the fact that some in our community are facing some very difficult medical diagnoses. Some are freshly bereaved. Some still struggle with long-term grief. And so this could be a deeply offensive statement, but I want to be cautious. I really do want to say it. Death is not the worst thing that could happen to us. I mean, one of the marks of modern living is that we have an almost fanatical determination to prolong life. So medicine and science and even the kind of diet and health industries, it all focuses on, hey, how long can we make life last? Sharon had one of those Nestle hot chocolate sachets on her desk this week. I don't normally drink it, so I was just looking at it. And I'll put the picture of the actual thing on the screen in a moment. But I mean, on the side of that sachet is this warning. These are my words. It's kind of saying, hey, if you have something sweet to drink, remember you've got to get off your backside and go do some exercise as well. And I'm going, hey, leave me alone, man. Can't I just enjoy my hot chocolate in peace? It's this obsession to try and go, hey, you've got to make your life longer. I'm not against healthy living, by the way, but one has a sense of that. But as followers of Jesus, we don't measure the significance of our lives simply by its duration, its longevity. We know that a long life is a great blessing. The scriptures speak of that. But it's not how we measure our lives. Our master, Jesus, lived for only 33 years. And the mark of a follower of Jesus is that the significance of our lives is measured by our faithfulness within the years that are given to us, however long or short they may be. The measure of our lives is not just the length, it's the faithfulness within the length of our lives. And it's in that sense that I mean death is not the worst thing that could happen to us, because the worst thing that could happen to us is if the difficulties of life, if the hardness of life, if the cruelty of life, if the fickleness, the vaporness of life were to rob us of our confidence in the goodness of God, or robbed us of our confidence in the life-giving power of God within difficulty, or rob us of our sense of faithfulness towards this God, that would be the worst thing. The worst thing that could happen to us would be to live this one fragile life, just accumulating, defending, and giving ourselves away, striving after nothing much more than what ends up to be just vapor. That would be the worst thing. Secondly, I want to say today that there's something about simplicity. As I read these words in Ecclesiastes, there seems to be something very compelling about simplicity. I mean, listen to this sentence. There is nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. It's not obvious. We've got to go looking for it. Eat, drink, and look for those special moments even within the difficulties of life. Simple things. Eat, drink, and little things within the toil. You'll know that in Scripture, meals are almost always metaphors for community, for sharing life with one another. They also become places, meals, tables, become places for reconciliation, and even on occasion for salvation. And that's because in the Scriptures, the very big things in life, the things with weight, the things with meaning, they happen around simple things like bread and wine. The clue to look for meaning in Scripture is look for the simple things, and you'll find the big things. So all the status and prestige and accomplishments and achievements and the bulk of material possessions and trying to leave a legacy or seeking the admiration of others, all of that is just hebel. It's just vapor. And they dim in the presence of the simple things which really matter. And so the teacher warns us that our lives are temporary and fragile, and within the brief moment which we have in this life, we really need the wisdom to choose wisely of what will matter and what will not matter to us, what we say yes to and what we say no to, that we might find ourselves choosing the simple things, giving our lives to the simple things around which are surrounded the weightiness, the big things of life. There's something about simplicity. The third and final thing I want to say, and this is actually a quote from Paul, but I want to say, whatever you do, in word or deed, do it in the name of the Lord. Do it for him. The teacher writes, apart from God, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? He's clear, in a world of fleeting breath, there is only one thing which is not vapor. There is only one thing which is eternal. It is, of course, the hand of God. And I think our response to this matters about how we see our lives. Either, and I'm exaggerating, but I hope you get the point, either I think we have a mindset that goes, God belongs in his religious box, and we visit him periodically for various reasons, whenever we need him, for comfort or for guidance or for some kind of reassurance. Or we can be people who see our lives as being exclusively and wholeheartedly devoted to doing the work of God. And by that, you know that I don't mean that all of us should be employed by the church. But it does mean that I want to see my life, my gifts, my resources, my energies as being uniformly directed to and for the glory of God. And I really want to give myself that. And I think those are the two choices. We either put God in his box whom we visit every now and then, or we say to ourselves, I want to invest my life in that which is eternal. Because I recognize that what is done in him, what is done in his name, what is done for him, for his glory, these are the things that will last forever. Everything else, says this chapter, everything else will become vapor. The Apostle Paul, many years after the teacher wrote these words, the Apostle Paul wrote these words. He said, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain, is not vapor. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. God be with you.